Hello everyone and welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are going on an absolutely massive chronological journey through ancient India. We're going to trace the footsteps of human civilization on the subcontinent, starting all the way back from the earliest humans striking flint to make fire right up to the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate in the medieval era. It's this sweeping, epic story of urbanization, profound philosophical awakenings, giant empires, and dramatic cultural shifts that literally laid the bedrock for the modern Indian subcontinent.
So, here is our roadmap. We're breaking down thousands of years of history into 5 clear eras. 1. Stone Age to Indus Valley. 2. Vedic Age and New Religions. 3. Mahajanapadas and Mauryas. 4. Sangam Age and South India. And 5. Guptas to the medieval era.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, Stone Age to Indus Valley, the dawn of urbanization.
Starting at the macro level, back in the Paleolithic age, humans were pretty much just focused on basic survival, right? Using fire and simple flakestone tools. But then, things really start to accelerate. By the Mesolithic period, we're seeing the first evidence of animal domestication in places like Bogor. Then comes a huge leap, the Neolithic era. At sites like Mehrgarh, humans transition from being nomadic hunter-gatherers to actually putting down roots and practicing agriculture. And finally, the Chalcolithic age arrives with a major technological breakthrough, the discovery of copper, the very first metal used by humans. This steady progression from farming to metallurgy, it directly triggered the massive societal boom that came next.
Out of those early agricultural settlements rose the highly organized urban centers of the Indus Valley civilization. And I mean highly organized. We're talking about cities laid out in precise grid patterns, with advanced drainage systems that wouldn't be seen again in some parts of the world for millennia. They mastered bronze tools and baked bricks. Just look at the ancient port city of Lothal. They actually found a terracotta model of a ship there, which proves their extensive maritime trade reached all the way to Mesopotamia. And over at Mohenjo-Daro, we find the famous Great Bath and that iconic bronze statue of the dancing girl. It really was an absolute peak of ancient urban planning.
But as the Indus Valley declined, the subcontinent saw the arrival of new people, new texts, and a profound philosophical shift. Which brings us to Section 2, Vedic Age and New Religions.
The absolutely crucial takeaway here is how society transformed. The early Vedic period, which was grounded in the Rig Veda, was primarily a pastoral society. Basically, your wealth was measured in cattle. The social structure, the Varna system, was super flexible and based on your occupation. Plus, women held a relatively better status in society back then. But jump to the later Vedic period and they discover iron tools. This allows people to clear thick forests and shift to a heavily agricultural society. And with that settled, agrarian wealth came the desire to hoard and inherit property. This caused those flexible occupational systems to harden into a rigid, hereditary caste system, and unfortunately, it led to a significant decline in the social status of women.
Now, this growing rigidity in the later Vedic period sparked a massive philosophical awakening. 2 major new religions emerged. Jainism was established through a lineage of 24 spiritual teachers, or Tirthankaras, with the 24th being Vardhamana Mahavira. It places an incredibly rigorous focus on absolute nonviolence, or ahimsa, and eventually divided into the Digambara and Shvetambara sects. Around the same time, we see the rise of Buddhism. Founded by Gautama Buddha, Buddhism centered its philosophy on the 4 noble truths, the reality of suffering and how to end it, and the Eightfold Path as a guide to living. It too would eventually divide into major sects, primarily Hinayana and Mahayana.
So how did a philosophy like Buddhism survive and organize itself over centuries without getting lost? Well, through major councils. And notice how successive kings stepped up to fund these gatherings. The first council was held in Rajgriha under King Ajatashatru, right after the Buddha's passing in 480 BC. Then you have the second council in Vaishali. The third council was held in Pataliputra under the famous Emperor Ashoka in 250 BC, and finally the fourth in Kashmir under Kanishka in 72 AD. Actually, it was during that fourth council that Buddhism formally split into those Mahayana and Hinayana sects we just mentioned.
Okay, now that we've covered the spiritual landscape, let's look at the political one in Section 3, Mahajanapadas and Mauryas.
Ancient Indian texts record the existence of 16 major Mahajanapadas. These were large republics and monarchies scattered all across the north, but one of them rose above all the rest, Magadha. Now why Magadha? It wasn't just luck. They had incredible geographic and resource advantages. Their early capital, Rajgir, was surrounded by 5 hills, making it a natural fortress.
Their later capital, Pataliputra, sat right at the confluence of the Ganges and Son rivers, perfect for trade. Plus, they literally sat on abundant iron ore deposits for making superior weapons, and they had access to massive herds of elephants for their military. It was essentially a perfect storm for conquest.
That supremacy of Magadha eventually gave birth to the mighty Mauryan Empire, but the entire nature of this empire shifted dramatically halfway through. Early Mauryan rule, under founder Chandragupta Maurya and his son Bindusara, was all about fierce territorial expansion. This policy of physical, military conquest was known as Bari Gausha. But then comes Emperor Ashoka. After witnessing the horrific bloodshed of the Kalinga War in 261 BC, Ashoka had a profound change of heart. He embraced Buddhism and completely abandoned violent expansion. Instead, he shifted to a policy of Dhamma Gosha, cultural and moral conquest. He spread messages of peace and welfare through his famous rock and pillar edicts. It is truly one of history's most remarkable paradigm shifts.
But empires, no matter how vast or moral, eventually fall. So here's a question for you. How exactly did India's center of power shift after the decline of this massive pan-Indian Mauryan empire?
To answer that, we have to look southward and outward. Let's move to Section 4, Sangam Age and South India.
While the North was dealing with political fragmentation, the Deep South was absolutely flourishing during what's known as the Sangam Age, which is famous for its rich Tamil literature. Three major dynasties dominated here. You had the Cheras ruling parts of modern Kerala and Tamil Nadu from their capital at Vanji, represented by the bow and arrow. The early Cholas controlled the Cholamandalam region, with cities like Uraiyur and Puhar marching under the symbol of the tiger. And the Pandyas, based in Maduri, were famous for their pearl trade and flew a flag with a fish symbol. And these kingdoms were incredibly interconnected through maritime trade, even trading extensively with the Roman Empire.
Meanwhile, the post-Mauryan void became a total melting pot of indigenous and foreign innovation. Indigenous powers like the Satavahanas in central India were pioneers. They initiated the practice of giving tax-free land grants to Brahmins and Buddhist monks, which reshaped Indian feudalism. At the same time, foreign arrivals brought massive economic leaps. The Indo-Greeks introduced the very first gold coins to the subcontinent. The Sakas established the Vikrama Samvat calendar, which is actually still widely used today. And the Kushan Empire, particularly under King Kanishka, grew immensely wealthy by asserting control over portions of the highly lucrative Silk Road.
And that brings us to the final era of this explainer. Section 5. Guptas to medieval era.
So the Gupta Empire is frequently referred to as a classical golden age of India, driven by unprecedented military success and cultural flourishing. It kicked off with Chandragupta I establishing the Gupta era in 320 AD. His successor, Samudragupta, was an unstoppable military genius, earning the nickname the Napoleon of India because he was virtually never defeated. But it wasn't just about war, right? Under Chandragupta II, culture hit an absolute peak. His court hosted the legendary Navaratnas, or Nine Gems. This was a circle of brilliant scholars and artists, including Kalidasa, often called the Shakespeare of India. This era also gave us incredible marvels like the rust-resistant iron pillar of Mehruli and the beautiful Dasavatara temple.
But after the Guptas fell, the political landscape became a dizzying Game of Thrones. In 606 AD, Harshavardhana managed to consolidate power in the north, ruling from Kannauj, but when he tried to expand south, he hit a brick wall. He was decisively defeated in 610 AD by the powerful Chalukya king, Pulakeshin II. But hey, Pulakeshin II's glory didn't last forever either. He was defeated in 630 AD by Narasimhavarman I of the rival Pallava dynasty. The center of power was constantly shifting. By 790 AD, this intense rivalry culminated in the tripartite struggle, a massive generations-long war between the Gujara Pratiharas, the Palas, and the Rashtrakutas, all fighting for control of Kannauj.
While the North was locked in that tripartite struggle, the Deep South saw the rise of an absolute juggernaut, the Imperial Cholas. Founded by Vijayalaya, this wasn't just a land-based kingdom. They built a terrifyingly effective naval empire. Under mighty kings like Rajaraja I and his son Rajendra I, the Cholas didn't just conquer southern India and Sri Lanka. They launched successful naval expeditions all the way into Southeast Asia. Rajendra I even marched his armies north to the Ganges River, earning him the title Gange Khanda Chola. But what's really fascinating is how they governed this massive space. They developed a highly advanced system of local village self-government.
featuring elected assemblies known as the and the Sabha. It's a remarkable balance of imperial might and local democratic administration.
Now, while the Cholas dominated the southern seas, the political reality of northern India was about to be fundamentally altered from the northwest. Back in 712 AD, Muhammad bin Qasim led the first major Arab invasion into the Sindh region. Centuries later, starting in 1001 AD, Mahmud of Ghazni launched a series of 17 raids deep into the subcontinent. But the real turning point for lasting political control came at the end of the 12th century. In 1191, the Turkic invader Muhammad Ghori clashed with the Rajput king Prithviraj Chauhan at the First Battle of Tarain, where Ghori was actually defeated. However, Ghori regrouped, came back just 1 year later, and that Second Battle of Tarain in 1192 resulted in a decisive victory for Ghori, permanently sealing the fate of northern India.
That victory led directly to the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate in 1206 AD. Specifically, it started with the Slave dynasty, founded by Ghori's general Kutubuddin Aibak. His successor, Iltutmish, is often considered the real consolidator of this empire. He officially moved the capital to Delhi, introduced a standard silver coin called the tanka, and set up the Chalisa, an elite ruling council of 40 loyal slaves to help administer the state. And, in a remarkable defiance of all medieval conventions, Iltutmish was succeeded by his daughter, Razia Sultan. She stepped up to become the first and ultimately the only female Muslim ruler of the Delhi Sultanate, a real trailblazer.
Wow, we've traveled from the first sparks of fire in the Paleolithic Age all the way to the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to ponder. As 1206 AD ushered in the Sultanate, how did these deep, ancient foundations, the urban planning of the Indus, the philosophies of the Vedic Age, the administrative brilliance of the Mauryas and Cholas, set the stage for the dramatic, complex cultural blending of the medieval period? History isn't just a list of dates in the past. It's a continuous, flowing river. I hope this explainer has helped you see those currents a little more clearly today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and thank you so much for joining me on this journey.